Good evening and welcome. Tonight, President Muhammadu Buhari expected to address the nation tomorrow as Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 submits interim reports on compliance with lockdown to him at the villa. Lagos State Government opens register to monitor compliance with lockdown relaxation guidelines, reduces restriction on elderly persons. Federal government impounds British aircraft for operating commercial flight within Nigeria, a violation of the country's existing ban on local and international flight operations. Former Foreign Affairs Minister Professor Bolaji Akinyemi sets the tone for a post-COVID-19 Nigeria, seeks building a new domestic order that is sustainable. And the UK pledges £84 million to fund COVID-19 vaccine research as the country's death toll drops. Plus sports stories. The first phase of the ease of lockdown is over, and President Muhammadu Buhari is expected to give a direction on the procedure tomorrow to decide whether to go into the second phase or not. The chairman of the task force and secretary to the government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, says he expects that new processes will be put in place to help with the fight against the coronavirus. The president had on May 4th relaxed the lockdown and replaced it with a ban on interstate travels and an 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew across the country. Our correspondent, Ibrahim Adra, reports.
With only hours before the expiration of the first phase of the ease on lockdown, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 is back in the State House, armed with an interim report. It's the third time of such briefing, the last one from the basis upon which President Muhammadu Buhari eased the lockdown in Lagos, Ogun and the FCT.
This is a routine briefing, and we've supplied him with all the material that is required to look at the issues.
The ease of lockdown has proved to be as controversial as the lockdown itself. During the first phase of 2 weeks, the number of confirmed cases have gone up. In all of its daily briefing, the task force laments lack of compliance with health advisories and guidelines. These worries are expectedly integral part of the PTF's report, which may inform a change of strategy.
We are in for a long haul. This is not a short distance race, it's a marathon, and we have to keep everything in perspective. Tomorrow, 18th, we should expect a new processes to be put in place, but we have to give him all the material details that should help us in preparing for the future. That is precisely why we're here.
The PTF believes going forward it is important that the community takes ownership and responsibility.
There must be a change, and there must be a paradigm now shift to community responsibility, because we believe that we have gotten to the stage of community transmission. And the only way you can deal with community transmission is when you give the responsibility back to the community.
Events of the last 2 weeks show many citizens behave in a manner that negates the objective of reducing infection, leading to upsurge in community transmission. So for government of the center and the state levels, security operatives and the citizens all need to reevaluate priorities. A task made more difficult with the imperatives of economic realities and staying healthy. From Abuja, Ibrahim Adra, Channels Television News.
Shortly after the meeting, the national coordinator of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Sani Aliyu, told Channels Television that there has been a review of the past 2 weeks of the first phase of the ease of the lockdown, and the president is due to make a pronouncement tomorrow. He was guest in our political program, Sunday Politics.
At this point in time, we don't even know whether we'll go into the second phase or we might revert. So, as I said, we already know the places that we have allowed to start operating, and we've reviewed the guidelines that we have, and we've made our recommendations. So, at this point in time, I think it's premature to say whether places of worship or schools will open, etc. Because who knows, maybe the places that are currently open may also close. So we have to wait until we get the decision of Mr. President, and then we'll go into further detail, just like we did with the last lockdown, where we provided additional information immediately after Mr. President's address. We will do the same thing as well with this coming phase. Nothing stops a phase 1 from being changed. Nothing stops us from progressing to a phase 2. But it all depends, as I said, on Mr. President's decision tomorrow.
Here in Lagos, the state begins the second phase of the gradual easing of the lockdown. The governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has given new guidelines that would hasten and as well guarantee safety of residents and contain spread of the virus. The governor says a register will be open to ensure inspection of businesses and compliance with physical distancing rules before the lockdown can be lifted totally. Our correspondent, Titilayo Aberu, has the story.
Lagos State is the epicenter of coronavirus in Nigeria, and the governor is here again to give a situation report on how the state is handling the gradual lifting of the lockdown. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu seems not pleased with the level of compliance so far.
We have not seen 80 or 90% compliance yet. I must also express that we're not very happy with the yellow buses at the level of compliance. Their union have assured us that they will continue to work on their members. And we've seen that commitment from them, but it's still a question of the followership. And we'll continue to work and encourage them that they impress on their followership.
For that reason, he's giving new guidelines for everyone if a total lifting of the lockdown is to be achieved.
We'll be starting what we call register to open, meaning that all of the players in the restaurant business, spa business, event centers, entertainment, the malls and the cinemas will go through a form of re-registration and space management. We will be coming to their facility. There will be a regulation that will be coming out, but we'll be supervising and we're coming to their facility to see their level of readiness for a future opening. Similarly, also at our places of worship, as much as possible, we will be going and working with them to see their level of preparedness in the event that we're going to unlock them in future. How well have they spaced out their auditorium, their places of worship? How many people can it take at any point in time? Ensuring that we'll keep as much space as possible before we begin to see them being ready for that unlocking.
Before this briefing, the State Commissioner for Health had announced on his Twitter handle that 3 Dubai returnees currently in isolation in the state are tested positive to the virus. The Lagos State government is promising not to leave anything to chance in the fight against the pandemic. Titilayo Aberowo, Channels Television News.
Plateau State has recorded its first COVID-19 death. This is coming shortly after the state government reviewed the lockdown in the state from Monday to Wednesday every week. Governor Simon Lalong disclosed this in a broadcast where he said the review will remain until further notice. Plateau State currently has 21 confirmed cases of COVID-19, 16 are active, and 4 of them have been discharged.
As of today, we have successfully treated and discharged 10 infected persons, including the index case, who have all been reunited with their families. The other 22 infected persons are still undergoing treatment and in stable condition. Sadly, one suspect whose sample was taken died yesterday before his result was returned positive. We've continued to quarantine suspected persons that come in from other states at our designated facilities to ascertain their status over the mandatory period of 14 days.
Nigeria needs to look towards sustenance beyond the coronavirus pandemic. The advice is given by former External Affairs Minister Professor Bolaji Akiyemi, who says now is the time to set up think think tanks focused on building a new domestic order. He encourages leaders to reach out to talents in the diaspora for input.
I expect people really, I expect a country like Nigeria now to have set up think tanks on post-COVID-19, not task forces where governors and ministers, are the key members. They have states to run, they have ministries to run. They are not in a position to focus their mind on how to build a new domestic order and how that domestic order will key into the new international order, which they know is coming. You need thinkers, people who are into R&D, who can come up with blueprints. And the Nigerians don't have to be based in Nigeria. Thank God. One of the things that this virus has showed us is that, you could sit in Abuja and have, through Zoom, you could be participating with somebody in Oklahoma who is an expert in that field. He doesn't need to fly back to Nigeria. That's what I would expect to see happen based in the presidency. It doesn't mean that that will be under President Buhari. I mean, it could be in the SGS office, but you need the imprimatur of the president so that people will know this is serious and not just something that the bureaucracy will now try to undermine or derail. That's what I would like to see.
And you can watch the full interview with Professor Bolaji Akinyemi on Diplomatic Channel. It airs tomorrow, Monday at 7:30 p.m. right here on Channels Television. Meanwhile, the search for a cure for COVID-19, a disease that has killed hundreds of thousands of people and infected millions, is getting more urgent as the implications of the pandemic become more far-reaching. Our correspondent, Olumide Macaulay, brings us an overview of the quest for a solution.
It's a race against time to find a cure for COVID-19 because as every day passes and casualties increase, another case could have been avoided if there was a vaccine or a cure. It's for that reason that countries are scrambling to find one. But if the posture of President Andry Rajoelina is anything to go by, Madagascar have a head start. Their solution is called COVID Organics, which has already been offered to Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari says scientific guidance will inform Nigerians' acceptance or rejection of the drug. While NAFDAC will doubtless be involved with that, the World Health Organization is working with 5 unnamed Nigerian states who are participating in clinical trials for vaccines and drugs.
5 states in Nigeria are participating in the ongoing WHO Coordinated Solidarity Trial. At the end of this, relevant health authorities will make statements on acceptable drugs for treating COVID-19.
Nigerian scientists are also making a push as they have opted for a clinical trial of hydroxychloroquine, popularized by U.S. President Donald Trump and Bauchi State Governor Bala Mohammed. The Lagos State government is already putting that to the test this week.
A drug called chloroquine, and some people would add to it hydroxychloroquine. So chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine. Now, this is a common malaria drug.
Funding will also come freely from the CBN for any researcher working to find a cure for the virus, a promise made by the CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele.
The Central Bank of Nigeria is developing a framework under which grants and long-term facilities will be provided to researchers, science institutions, and biotechnology firms to develop Nigerians' homegrown vaccines.
The search for a cure is frenetic. It's almost drowned by the number of reported confirmed cases of COVID-19 around the world. According to Johns Hopkins University, over 4.6 million people are infected with the disease as at the filing of this report, and over 300,000 people have lost their lives. And these figures keep changing like the weather, and not for the better. The bottom line is, whether by traditional medicine or conventional medicine, a proven cure is a proven cure. And that's what the world needs right now. Olumide Macaulay, Channels Television News.
In part two after the break, we'll focus on the search for COVID-19 cure and the possibilities of a homemade vaccine in Nigeria. We'll be joined by Professor of Pharmaceutical Microbiology, Professor Joseph Ehimadu. Plus, schools are still shut. The COVID-19 is definitely taking a toll on the education sector. Virtual classes, obviously, not working for everyone. Stay with us. Welcome back. If it has joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. President Muhammadu Buhari is expected to address the nation tomorrow as Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 submits interim reports on compliance with lockdown to him at the villa. Lagos State Government opens register to monitor compliance with lockdown relaxation guidelines, reduces restriction on elderly persons. Federal government impounds British aircraft for operating commercial flight within Nigeria, a violation of the country's existing ban on local and international flight operations. Former Foreign Affairs Minister Professor Bolaji Akinyemi sets the tone for a post-COVID-19 Nigeria, seeks building of a new domestic order that is sustainable. And the UK pledges £84 million to fund COVID-19 vaccine research as country's death toll drops. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. In continuation of our focus on the search for COVID-19 cure and the possibility of a homemade vaccine in Nigeria, I've been joined on the News at 10 by Professor of Pharmaceutical Microbiology, Professor Joseph Ehimadu. He joins us via Skype from his home in Zaria, Kaduna State. Professor, thank you for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you very much.
With a connection to malaria symptoms, the cure to COVID-19 should not be a difficult matter for African countries where both orthodox and unorthodox means are used when tackling the disease. Could that be the reason why the WHO is taking the Madagascar cure seriously?
Well, the good Abraham Brotherhood nature of Madagascar for giving us a sample is something to cherish. However, Nigeria have about 42 federal universities. We have a lot of researchers that can do the job if they are well organized to attend to the issues. Artemisian admixtures they are sending to Nigeria is not linked to any pharmaceutical sciences. However, we appreciate their good brotherlyhood that made them to give us that samples. Of course, NAFDAC is there to do the needful before it can be given to Nigeria. And of course, as directed by the president, issue will be resolved amicably to be sure that it's good for human consumption.
The WHO,
Thank you.
Right, the WHO has approved, given approval to 5 countries to go ahead and, search for a vaccine. And if more countries are on board with this, then everyone should have access to it. But do you think that everyone will indeed have access to this, looking at the complexities of African governments with regard to administration and funding and, I dare say, corruption?
Thank you. This is a crucial question you are asking that are begging for serious answer in Nigeria context. That's going to be the treatment trial to be done in 5 states of Nigeria with the federal capital. We can't forget very shortly the 1996 episode of Pfizer Trova in Kano. And it has to be taking place about 3 stages of that drug to be used in Nigeria. I'm sure NAFDA will do what is needful before the trial can even begin. The concern is about the legal perspective of the volunteers that will be used must be critically examined so that the episode of what happened in Kano with Pfizer Trovan should not occur again. The complexity of Nigeria and other further African countries and other issues to look at. There are no politics to be paid because like the case of Kano, there were politics. And of course, we lost many people that were subjected to that drug testing. This must be critically examined before embarking on such treatment trial in Nigeria so that we don't fall into the same error that happened in Kano with that treatment trial. Thank you.
It is a wonder that, Africa as a continent and the African Union has not led collectively in pooling resources to search for a vaccine. Do you think that this is a problem of the current democratic structure of the African Union, or you think that this is a problem with governments wanting to work in silos instead of working together in a community?
Thank you. If you look at African setup, vis-a-vis the drug production and the distribution chain, you will discover that government has never been involved in the productions of vaccine. They hitherto depends on foreign dependency on this drug to be dumped on African soil, and that should be discouraged. Since Nigeria government have not before now encouraged that, except the startup. Common research that need almost 20 million cannot be guaranteed. See the problem of research. And if African government cannot produce before now, is it now they are going to encourage that vaccine productions? For one vaccine production, need about $500 million for it to be executed. Where is that fund in Africa? Where is that corporate entity in Africa that will back up the productions of vaccine? All the corporations that are in existence in Africa, all they need to take their profit immediately, no long-term projections. And these are major problems African countries are going through. On that basis, you discover African countries to develop vaccine of their own will have a long way to go. Thank you.
Food for thought there, Professor. Thank you again for joining us on the News at 10. Professor Joseph Ehimidu, Professor of Pharmaceutical Microbiology, thank you again for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you very much. God bless.
We're in Edo State now, where the government says it has intensified active COVID-19 case search in 432 rural and urban communities across the 18 local government areas, with contact tracing of over 796 persons and testing of 824 others. Governor Godwin Obaseki, in a statement, explains that since recording the first case on March 23rd, the state has recorded a total of 792 suspected cases of COVID-19, with 95 confirmed cases across 11 local government areas. Meanwhile, the governor says the state's 35th COVID-19 patient has been discharged after testing negative for the virus. He commends the resilience and commitment of health workers and other first responders on the front line in containing the coronavirus pandemic. The Yobe State COVID-19 Committee on Prevention and Control has commenced intensive community dialogue and engagements in high-risk areas of recently recorded mysterious deaths, though the state government insists after analyzing data collected that the deaths were not COVID-19 related. It is taking proactive measures against the recurrence of such incidents.
In the past 5 weeks, over 471 unusual deaths were confirmed across 5 local government councils in Yobe State. The situation resulted in panic, with some residents ascribing the deaths to COVID-19, while others became wary of accessing health facilities for medication. But the state government insists only 3% of the deaths were related to COVID-19.
Your Highness, whenever we are here, I feel at home because...
And now the COVID-19 committee is engaging traditional rulers in high-risk communities on the need to observe precautionary measures.
This is in continuation of our community engagement drive towards empowering the communities with the knowledge and skills for them to take responsibility on their own towards the prevention and control of COVID-19.
The royal fathers, who are the custodians of norms and values, pledge their cooperation.
We are very appreciative of what they have told us, and all the community leaders have heard what they are doing, and inshallah we'll see to it that we comply with all the directives on social distances and how to curb the spread of the virus.
We are also very grateful to our leaders who have been tirelessly working to educate the public the danger of this coronavirus disease, and also to educate the public on how to avoid it.
32 cases of the coronavirus have so far been recorded in Yobe State, with 5 deaths. The state government believes sensitizing the grassroots will go a long way towards curbing the spread of the pandemic.
Because you are part...
The coronavirus pandemic is impacting on education in multifaceted ways, as learning from home has become the new norm for many students whose academic calendar has been abruptly disrupted. For some others, they lack equal opportunities to access virtual knowledge or electronic learning experiences due to the socio-economic disadvantage in society. Our correspondent, Hajara Aliyu, takes a look at the impact of the pandemic on learning across the divide and how school proprietors are coping.
No student has sat on these chairs since 20th March 2020 after the last lesson. Dust, cobwebs and filth have taken over classrooms, with some under lock and key owing to a forced and long holiday as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
On a regular school day, this class would have been full of activity, but what we get right now is dead silence. Experts fear that when these pupils resume, catching up may be a little bit slow. And for those in the formative stage, they may have to start on a clean slate.
Firdausi Yahaya's chances of gaining entry into the university has been delayed. She is supposed to be writing WAEC. Instead, she joins the virtual class from home. To learn effectively, she needs some quiet and a good network.
This whole lockdown thing, we are supposed to stay at home and we are supposed to read. But then the problem is that, honestly, some of us are not going to read at home. So with this online classes, we get to join classes and actually learn stuff we haven't learned during school. And it is one of the best opportunities we've ever had.
School proprietors are counting their losses in multiple ways, especially paying staff salaries. And for Mr. Muhammad Al-Hassan, he worries that the virtual class introduced by his school is being marred by apathy.
We have about 180 students that are supposed to write the SSCA exam when eventually we come back. And we can hardly find 30 students joining the class.
The experience is different for Asia Muhammad, who attends a public school. For her, learning from home is not an option, largely due to the nature of the environment she finds herself. Her household chores have increased, and for her younger siblings, it means more playtime, since the Islamic schools have also shut down. But Asia's guardian laments the difficulty of learning from home. While the experience differ for many during the pandemic, the end result may be largely determined by technology, power supply, commitments, economic and social status. Hajira Aliyu, Channels Television News.
When the news at 10 returns, some Bayelsa residents lament demolition of their markets by the state government and are demanding compensation. Once again. Welcome back. The House of Representatives has disputed some media reports that a federal high court sitting in Abuja has ordered the suspension of the ongoing process of the consideration of the Control of Infectious Diseases Bill. A statement from the House spokesman, Benjamin Kalu, describes the reports as misrepresentation of facts, which have in turn misled various media outfits and the general public. According to the statement, the applicant had, by way of motion ex parte, sought a court order suspending the consideration of the bill by the House. But the court declined to grant the relief sought by the applicant in order to enable the respondents in the case to appear before it and enter a defense. The House spokesman says it is unfortunate that the purport of the interim order was wrongly reported and that the House wishes to put the order of the court in proper perspective. In the past 7 days, 48 people have died from the coronavirus in Nigeria. It's puts the total number of deaths due to the coronavirus in the country at 176. Expectations are now rising on the total number of decisions that the president could take tomorrow. To share new insights about vital COVID-19 statistics in Nigeria is Babajide Ogusowo, Channels TV's data and information consultant. Welcome.
Good evening.
Still scribbling away. So more COVID-19 tests mean more cases, and more cases, unfortunately, sometimes translate to more deaths. How is Nigeria's survival metrics looking?
We're doing better than the global average, and I'll share a bit more about that later. But tonight, I have some good news. I've also got some mixed news, and I've got some bad news. I'd like to start with the good news. In Nigeria, every virus that has attacked the country, Nigerians have defeated, from influenza to SARS to smallpox to Ebola. But tonight, I'd like to go down memory lane. Let's take a look at what happened when HIV came into Nigeria. More than 3.5 decades ago, and if we take a close look at when HIV came, here's what you notice. November 1984, the introduction of HIV into Nigeria. 36 years ago. And Nigerians were worried, just like Nigerians are worried today, about a virus that had no cure or had no vaccine. But what has happened in the last over 3 decades? We've managed and we've fought and won HIV because of 3 words: practice, safe, sex. And so today, yes, the HIV still has no cure, vaccine, or treatment, but we fought that war and we've won. So that's good news. Now, there's even more good news. The evidence from the NCDC shows that 97% of all coronavirus cases in Nigeria are still alive. In other words, we have a fatality rate of 3%. And so, yes, this virus is dangerous, but a lot of Nigerians are surviving. So there are several ways to look at it, but tonight, I'd like us to look at the coronavirus in 3 different ways. And that's looking at the 3 categories of states that we have in Nigeria. The 3 categories of states that we have in Nigeria. In category 1, we have those states that each have reported more than 10 deaths. And we have 5 of those states. Most of those states in category 1 are located in the northwest of the country. So that's one way to look at it. The 5 states that have reported 10+ deaths: Lagos, Kano, Borno, Sokoto, and Katsina. That is really where the concerns are, the northwest and the southwest. Yeah. But here's what you notice when we take a look into the category 2 states. The category 2 states are states with 1 to 10 deaths. And you have 20 states, including the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, in that second category of states that have reported more than 1 death, but less than 10 deaths. But here's another perspective. The third category, states that have recorded 0 deaths. And in that third category, we have 11 states. Plateau was among those states, but Plateau now has recorded 1 death and it has moved to category 2. So in all, the summary is there are 5 states in Nigeria that have recorded more than 10 deaths. There are 20 states, including Abuja, that have recorded 1 to 10 deaths. And we have 11 states that have recorded 0 deaths. So that is some good news. That is really some good news.
Yes. When you think of it like that, it really sounds like good news. Well, when you look at developed countries such as the United States, the number of deaths per every 1,000 cases is significantly higher than Nigeria. Maybe that has something to do with the population, I don't know. But is this because of also a difference in genetics, treatment, whether, I don't know, immunity or chance, or is there any evidence that points to why more Americans are dying? Because they are developed, they do have purportedly a higher health system.
Yes, they do, and you're right. But before any group or government or institution comes in Nigeria to claim credit of why we're performing better than the United States, I'd like to share some evidence with you, and I want you to listen carefully, please. One of the group of people that have the highest fatality regarding the coronavirus are the elderly, those that are above the age of 65. So the right question is...
Sorry, but a number of them are surviving the coronavirus now.
A number of them are surviving the coronavirus, but we know that those that have underlying symptoms and the elderly really struggle to survive when they are diagnosed with the coronavirus. So the right question is, how many Americans are living above 65? And then we look at how many Nigerians are above 65. And the evidence from the United States Census Bureau shows that 16% of America's population are above the age of 65. You heard me right, 16%. The National Population Commission in Nigeria says only 3% of Nigerians, only 3%, live to celebrate their 65th birthday. Here's what I mean. In Nigeria, most of those that the coronavirus would have killed are already dead. Does this mean that if you are below the age of 65, you should celebrate? No, it doesn't. But what it means is for the government to remember that there are many things that are killing Nigerians apart from the coronavirus. And so many Nigerians are not living to the age of 65. And that's really the mixed news. So we've looked at the good news, we've seen the mixed news. And finally, I'd like to share some bad news. The NCDC, 3 weeks ago, talked about its target, a target to test 2 million Nigerians within the next 3 months. Within the last week, the NCDC has only tested 8,000 people. What it means is, at the rate at which the NCDC is going, if it doesn't move faster, perhaps Jesus might be back before we get to 2 million tests. And so the lesson is there's good news, there's mixed news, and there's bad news. And while the nation expects the president's decision tomorrow, the president now has seen the good news, the mixed news, and the bad news. But like we started with the HIV and that Nigerians have defeated every virus, we have nothing to fear other than fear itself. Franklin Roosevelt.
Indeed. And of course, we still have to maintain social distancing and good hygiene. At the end of the day, we are responsible for our health. Thanks again, Baba.
Nigerians have to keep preventing because prevention is better than cure.
Exactly. Thanks again for showing up tonight. In other news, the federal government has impounded an aircraft belonging to Flair Aviation, a United Kingdom-based aviation company, for violating the current flight ban into the country. The Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, announced this in his verified Twitter handle, where he said Flair Aviation was operating a commercial flight as against the humanitarian operations it was given approval to operate in Nigeria. The minister explains that the crew of the flight are also being interrogated to know their level of culpability, as there shall be maximum penalty for the offence. Nigeria announced a ban on flights into and within the country since March, when current coronavirus pandemic assumed alarming dimension. The ban was further extended by 4 weeks on May 6th by the federal government. Farmers and herders in Nasarawa State are asking the state government to intervene in the skirmishes between both parties in Kiana local government area. The warring parties say they want law and order restored in their communities so they can carry out their predominant occupations without intimidation.
Aside the coronavirus pandemic the world is grappling with at the moment, the Nasarawa state government additionally has some security challenges bedeviling parts of the state to deal with. Crisis between farmers and herders in Kiana local government area is one of the upheavals that has recently broken out. Ferdinand and Williams are both victims of the skirmishes between farmers and herders in Kaderko community. Yet to recover from machete wounds, Williams narrates his ordeal as the people seek the path of peace.
After visiting, supervising my farm, I was on my way coming back home. Then I entered in the hands of the Fulanis who were on the road. So when they saw me, they removed their cutlasses and they wanted to break my head with the cutlass. I now use my left hand and protect my head. So the cutlass now cut my hand.
The apprehension has occasioned the abandonment of farmlands. Homes deserted by men, leaving behind women and children. While some of them source for water, some are having a field day as this herder leads his livestock to graze. But the men gather at the village square to extend their pleas to authorities. More worrisome for them is the alleged seizure of their farmlands as they look up to the government for a redress.
We call on the state government to direct the relevant security agencies to restore law and order in thief communities.
The traditional ruler of Kaderko refutes land seizure claim and calls for calm, just as cattle breeders are tasked to obey the law.
I want everybody to embrace peace. Because as we are, we don't want everybody to take law into his hand.
When there is conflict, there will be no development. So we are calling on all our people to be law-abiding.
Decades of peaceful coexistence between farmers and herders is threatened in this domain. But farmers and herders are unanimous in their call for government mediation so they can engage in their various activities peacefully. Halima Gayam, Channels Television News.
President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered the military to commence a major operation to sweep bandits and kidnappers out of Katsina State. A major proactive operation by special forces, which details are being withheld, is now in progress to replace the reactive strikes against insurgent camps. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Gabriel Olonishakin, who has been measured in issuing official statements on the ongoing exercise, has briefed the president on the plan he intends to flag off shortly. According to him, a planning team is already in the state selecting targets and making preparations for the execution of the unprecedented operation. President Buhari also extends his condolences to the families of those killed and prays for the recovery of the injured. Meanwhile, the president has reappointed Mr. Benjamin Akabweze as Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation. The presidency said this on its Twitter handle, that Mr. Akabweze is carrying out reforms in the Budget Office towards improving the effectiveness and efficiency of the Budget Office of the Federation. The tweet adds that Mr. Akabweze's tenure was renewed for another term in order to institutionalize his achievements for a sustainable improvement in the Budget Office of the Federation. He was first appointed as Special Advisor Planning to the President on February 15, 2016, and later redeployed and appointed as DG Budget on June 10, 2016. Still ahead on the news at 10. The UK pledges £84 million to fund COVID-19 vaccine research as the country's death toll drops. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Bayelsa State government has demolished illegal markets at the popular Etegwe roundabouts in Yenagoa as part of measures to contain spread of the coronavirus. Chairman of the State COVID-19 Implementation Committee says the exercise is to ensure that basic preventive measures are met.
There's something happening at the Etegwe roundabouts in Yenagoa, the Bayelsa State capital, and it has brought out an unusual number of traffic officers. The reason soon enough becomes clear. They are directing traffic away from the demolition exercise commissioned by the state government. As the caterpillar brings down structures considered illegal by the authorities, many scamper to salvage what they can. Those who could not make it to save their goods in time watch helplessly, some pulling at hair in confusion. Traders who by now are lost on what next to do are livid at the timing set by the government.
Just 2 days ago, we are being informed officially. We are being given a quick notice, a hardcover quick notice. So how do you expect us, most of us that have property valuable, how do you expect us to evacuate here in 2 days' time?
Do something, because this is the market I used to train myself to school. This is the market I used to take care of my younger ones and also my parents.
The head of the demolition team insists the exercise is within the legal framework and is also in the best interest of the well-being of everyone.
The entire exercise here we are trying to destroy illegal structures. And of course, you know the moments we are in now. We are trying to combat an unseen enemy, which is COVID-19.
While the government claims justification, the people claim injustice. The reality is that the levelling of structures has taken place. What those affected may be looking forward to will be the possibility of compensation. But with the reason cited by the authorities for the demolition, it will be interesting to see how it all turns out.
Troops of the Nigerian army have raided and destroyed militants' hideouts in Arugbanama community in Boni local government area of Rivers State. According to the coordinator of Defense Media Operations, Major General John Enenche, the troops of 146 Battalion deployed to Boni Island engaged in a gun duel with the militants, killing 2 of them and recovering rifles, ammunition and camouflage, among others. Major General Enenche adds that the troops arrested a suspected criminal named Stephen Aboje along Warri Sapele Road in Uvie local government area of Delta State while on a routine patrol. The UK government has promised to make available £84 million to researchers working to find a coronavirus vaccine. If the vaccine is successful, the UK will be the first to get access and will receive 30 million of the 100 million jabs expected to be made. The UK's Business Secretary, Alok Sharma, says the £84 million funding would help mass produce a vaccine that Oxford scientists are working on to be able to provide doses in the UK as soon as possible if current trials were successful.
So far, the government has invested £47 million in the Oxford and Imperial vaccine programmes. But today, I can announce an additional £84 million of new government funding to help accelerate their work. This new money will help mass produce the Oxford vaccine so that if current trials are successful, we have dosages to start vaccinating the UK population straight away.
He also said that Oxford University and drug maker AstraZeneca had struck a global licensing deal and would work to make 30 million doses available for the UK population by September, adding that a rapid deployment facility had been set in place to start producing vaccines over the summer. Meanwhile, China is monitoring the spread of the virus in its northeastern Jilin province as it pushes for school resumption and graduate employment. The mainland reported 5 new confirmed cases on Saturday, of which 2 were imported from Tianjin and Guangdong. 3 locally transmitted cases were reported in Jilin province. And in the United States, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo took a coronavirus nasal swab test on live TV during his daily briefing. He said he wanted to demonstrate that the test was easy to do and to encourage those with symptoms to get tested. Finally, Greeks returned to church on Sunday after 2 months, with many receiving Holy Communion as a ban on mass gatherings to curb the spread of the coronavirus was eased. It was a special moment for those who gathered at Ios Spiridonas Church in Piraeus, where the chants of the Sunday liturgy were broadcast on loudspeakers, and chairs were set up outside the church so more people could attend under the new social distancing rules. In sports news, the International Table Tennis Federation Nigeria Open Tournament scheduled for August 18th to the 22nd this year in Lagos has been cancelled owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. Chairman of the local organizing committee, Eniton Oshodi, says the health of every athlete is of great concern to organizers of the ITTF Challenge tournament, as well as the safety of and health of the large number of fans that throng the stadium to watch the event. Robert Lewandowski's 26th league goal of the season ensured Bayern Munich made a winning return to Bundesliga action, beating Union Berlin 2-0 to re-establish a 4-point lead at the top earlier this evening. Lewandowski scored for the spot and Benjamin Pavard struck a late header as the visitors swerved a hiccup. Bayern, who reopened their 4-point lead at the Summit, face Eintracht Frankfurt next weekend before a meeting with title rivals Borussia Dortmund on May 26th. And the main news again. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 today submitted its interim report to President Muhammadu Buhari on the compliance of Nigerians with lockdown guidelines ahead of second phase of post-COVID-19 relaxation, post-lockdown relaxation. That is the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani. Good night. Stay safe.